This is the President of the United States. Who is this? Is it you again?
Look behind you.
This is my private line. How did you get through?
They're everywhere. All the time. We see them every day. But you have to look behind you.
There is nothing behind me. How did you get this number?
The spaceman told me.
What spaceman?
It doesn't matter. I'm telling you about monsters. Please, you must look behind you.
Young lady, there are no monsters in the Oval Office.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said,
"Wait, Sammy."
the loudspeaker spoke up and said,
"Wait, Sammy."
the loudspeaker spoke up and said,
"Wait, Sammy."
give up, give up, give up, give up, give up.
Wait, Sammy. Wait, Sammy. Wait, Sammy.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. Ground Zero is always coming to you live from FM News 101 KXL in Portland, Oregon. And we're heard around the world thanks to KXL.com and also groundzeromedia.org. We do have a chat room as well. You can go and click on the left-hand column where it says chat. Come on in and hang out with us and talk with people who are discussing the show. There are skeptics, believers, all kinds of people in that chat room. They discuss what is being said. It's a behind-the-scenes chat, and you can be involved with it by going to groundzeromedia.org. See what people are thinking, what they're saying about the show, the guests, you name it. It's kind of a behind-the-scenes thing, and we do that. We are the only talk show that I know of that has the kind of national appeal that has a chat room, and we like to see what people have to say about what we're talking about and monitor it as well. Tonight, we have a special show, and what's odd about this show is that there was a person named Sarah who's on my Facebook. You can go to my Facebook page at facebook.com/groundzeroradio. And she posted a story that she found called Men with Black Hats. Or it was something to that effect, a Black Hat Man. It was called the Black Hat Man. And she told me, she said, didn't you encounter a Black Hat Man a while ago, and you just didn't elaborate? And I thought, yeah, that's true, I did. And that was back on February 1st. It was February 1st. I was out paying bills, running errands, and I had to have a meeting with the people of Legal Shield, actually, on that day. I was having a meeting with them to talk about the show we were planning. And I was out near my old neighborhood. There was a bar out there called Suki's. It's right there near the freeway, and it's right there near the 12 bus goes by there. And it's in the southwest neighborhood. And I looked across the street, and I saw this tall. He was about 6'2", maybe. Kind of. He looked like he was tall, standing there, well dressed. He was wearing a black hat, black overcoat, wore a white shirt and a black tie, and he had no eyebrows. Had this dead-looking expression on his face, and he also appeared to have no hair, and it's because I didn't see any hair above the collar, near the collar. He was wearing a black hat, so, I mean, he could have hair on top of his head, but he just looked like he was pretty clean. He had no eyebrows either. I saw him polite say hello. He stopped, turned to look back at me while I was passing. I kept going, and then I realized that the man looked very much like an MIB, a man in black. So I decided to turn back and follow him. And I grabbed my new cell phone camera that I have. On my cell phone, I have this camera, and I tried to position it to get a picture of him. I kept going and snapped a picture and I looked at my cell phone, and he didn't appear on my cell phone pic. It was really weird. I couldn't get him on my cell phone pic. So I was following him, thought, I'm going to find out who this guy is. But I didn't want to act like I was stalking him because I didn't want to have him get suspicious of me following him with a camera. I wasn't about to bother him or anything. So, because I had to get to an appointment. But I lost the guy. I think he jumped into Suki's, or he may have walked into the hotel or something. I don't know if he disappeared out of thin air, but it was almost as if he did. And so I went to my appointment, and it was at the Starbucks here at the office, and I told the person at my interview what had happened. I said, I saw this man in black standing on the street, and she was saying to me, because I was meeting with Gene Leiter and his assistant and the representative for Legal Shield, and she said to me that it sounded like I was watching too much Fringe, because Gene, of course, is a Fringe aficionado, and so am I. And we were talking about the observers, and I said they were kind of like he looked kind of like one of those observer guys on Fringe. And I kind of giggled and agreed, and then we saw 3 other men in black come into the Starbucks. And she kind of looked over, and I kind of looked over and thought, whoa, this is kind of weird. And I said, you notice this? I'm not imagining it. Those guys are wearing black coats, and they're standing here at the Starbucks, and they just are standing there. And she said, well, they're probably Mormons. And I laughed, and I said, yeah, probably they're Mormons. These guys had hair, by the way. They didn't have, they didn't have any, they didn't have any weird looks like this guy that was over by Suki's. And so I wrote about the encounter, first of all, in an article called Signposts. You can get it on my website if you go to groundzeromedia.org. And, for me, the paranormal and the strange, I attract it. And so when I track stuff like that, I just kind of take it in stride. But the thing is Sarah, the woman who actually posted on my Facebook about Black Hat Man, this tall, lanky guy with a big black brimmed hat, she told me, she said, if you read this column that was just posted, if you see this column just posted, it says that if you see one, you might as well, it's a bad omen to see a man in black. And I thought to myself, okay, well, I've seen him before. I even interviewed one. Last time I had a bad encounter with men in black, my car was bombed. But she brought up something I didn't even think about. I didn't put 2 and 2 together because, people tend to think that I think about this stuff, and I don't like to think overtly paranoid. But after I saw that man in black, and after I talked with the people at Legal Shield, and after I had my appointment, I came in to do the show. And it was a show that I was going to be doing, actually did with H. Michael Sweeney. And we were talking about less than lethal weapons that night. Psionic weapons, weapons that they use to, it's called active denial weapons, where they cause you to collapse, or they cause you to, feel like your skin's on fire. They cause all kinds of things to go wrong. And, Dave, I want you to come on for a minute, just so that we can have confirmation here. Mm-hmm. What happened that night when I was talking with H. Michael Sweeney?
Well, we had to call an ambulance for you. Put it bluntly, it was just a really strange night because it just got weirder and weirder, and the callers weren't necessarily weirder and weirder, but they were more in tune. And of course, the board was lit up like a Christmas tree, a lot of callers and whatever else. But then at 10 o'clock, I go in the other room, start writing stories for the news in the newsroom, and I was doing that. And then I forget how much time went by, half an hour or more, and then all of a sudden we hear you saying, "Call me an ambulance."
Yeah. And
we're just like, did he just say that?
Yeah.
And you were dead serious.
And I was collapsed. I was collapsing.
You went,
yeah. I couldn't continue the show,
which never happens.
No.
But we can't say never anymore. But it was just very peculiar, Clyde.
Yeah, and here's something I want to tell you, and I've told this to many people, and there are people who can back me up on this. People who I've worked with in the past. I have done radio shows. I have presented radio programs on the air, and not even demonstrating it, but I have done shows with toothaches. Bad toothaches. I've done shows with backaches, back problems, all kinds of things. I've had a backache or a toothache. I've done shows where I'm throwing up. Mm-hmm. I have to run in the bathroom, run back, and go back and forth like that. And people do that in radio. Yes. You don't know that. Behind the scenes, sometimes, we have to come on the air. We can't miss days. So some days we come on the air, and we could be horfing off the air, and you don't even know it. We could be tossing. No, you're going to Austin. You can hear him in the background.
All you're going to hear is that wonderful smile of Clyde Lewis talking about the extraterrestrial.
Right, exactly. And I've even, this, I even did a show one night at KOTK when the studios at KOTK were on fire.
But you manned the ship.
Yes. I kept it going. We had the dumpsters on fire underneath the building. I smelled smoke. The alarms were going off, and I was doing my show. And, in fact, one of my friends had to call the fire department and tell him, the guy on the air is a moron because he's not going to leave the studio. And it's true. I was doing the show in the middle of a fire. Mm-hmm. Okay? So to have an ambulance called while I'm doing a show with a guy who is called the professional paranoid telling me about non-lethal weapons or less than lethal weapons that can apprehend you or shut you down or have you collapse, literally, and then I collapse because I'm in pain, makes me wonder. And so it was brought up today to me about it. The paramedics showed up. Now, the strange thing about this whole affair was, now I've had health problems in the past, it's no secret, but the situation is that my blood pressure was sky high when the paramedics got here.
Yeah, you shared the numbers with me. We don't have to go there. It was you were walking dead.
Yeah, I was ready for stroke.
But people who don't do radio need to understand. You were there, and I just want to interject this. The show must go on.
You do, yes.
But you were rendered academic that night.
Yeah, I was.
You were done.
I was done, and I was gone. And so I ended up getting transported by ambulance to OHSU. The doctor said I was stabilized and fine. I went home. And then I'm still curious as to what happened that day. And I'm kind of, now wondering because of all the strange stuff going down to the beach. That we went down to the beach, we did our thing there. We were told that there was some strange stuff going on there. And yes, I'm getting emails from people saying, "Oh, it's a hoax." No, it's not a hoax. The story may not be true that you're reading, but it did happen down there. And we did have authorities telling us that, we had authorities telling us about what may have been blown up out there. We've had all kinds of strange stories. We're still trying to make heads or tails of this whole thing. But I want to tell you, what I do here, and when people, say things like, I think this is all phony or this is all crazy, look, I don't intentionally or try to create a hoax on this program. What I do is real. I get in there, I roll my arms up, and I get into the middle of it, and I try to figure out if it's real or not, and I experience these things. I will tell you if I'm pulling your leg or not. I will then stop everything and say, by the way, I'm pulling your leg. No, this is real. It's reality. And so I had to talk about this tonight because it's been on my mind for a while, from the February 1st show, the Signposts article, and now the exploration into the beaches, the boxes, all this craziness, and now the Men in Black. I want to talk about the MIBs tonight, and I'm going to do that. Also, if any of you, it was actually the day before that UFO was seen over Oregon, where that contrail made that 90-degree turn, and everybody called from the FAA, from the municipal airport, saying, we didn't know what that was, Clyde. It may have been a rocket or it may have been something else. It all happened in sequence. And then the box story and everything else, you got to try to piece together what is real and what isn't real. And I'll tell you, this is very real for those who are reporting it and for those that are involved. We'll be talking about the Men in Black tonight a little bit and asking for your calls and your experiences at 503-417-9595 or 1-877-733-1011. We'll be back.
Got an opinion? Call KXL now. 503-417-9KXL or 877-733-1011. Back to Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101 KXL.
Business as usual in the apocalypse. Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
Tonight we'll be bringing on Timothy Green Beckley and Claudia Cunningham, the Men in Black. Of course, Timothy Green Beckley is a UFO paranormal pioneer. He's written several books. We'll be talking with him in just a bit, and also Claudia about the Men in Black and their findings. My experience about a Man in Black, or the Man in Black situation, February 1st, and on that day, in fact, it was brought up to me by a listener who was in my Facebook. She said that she was reading a story about Black Hat Man. I guess it's this meme that they're starting on. Somebody had just posted on the chat room. Above top secret, Black Hat Man is this character with this huge brimmed hat, wearing black, tall, lanky guy. And I saw a Man in Black on February 1st that was basically the same thing. And on that night, I was rushed to the hospital with some sort of a malady. What's up?
I have, if you don't mind, I have two questions. Okay, first of all, what a Man in Black looks like. I mean, can you just feel it? Do you just know? I mean, is it? It's not like Dita on. You know?
No, I could have Timothy and Claudia discuss that, because I've come in contact. I interviewed one. I came in contact with one prior to my car being bombed in Salt Lake City, which that's another story. If I get into that later, if that's the case. And then of course the one that was seen that I saw on February 1st.
And you say that's bad luck. So my other question, and just throw that for the Worth Department.
Right.
We were feeling here that this was so surreal. I mean, I'm kind of reliving it now. It was kind of tingly in the air or whatever. And then you made that whatever. When you said, when you got to the point where you had to say, call an ambulance for me now. Right. What were you going through? Where were you swimming?
Well, there was a sharp pain that came from my back, went up into my side in my area. I have this area where it didn't heal properly after my cancer surgery. Went into that area. Then it went, and it came all the way up my chest into my throat, and I felt like I was having a heart attack. It was a strange feeling. Never experienced it before, ever. And it was just really bad, and I just
was your head swimming? Was it just
no? I felt
surreal?
I actually felt like I was going to fall. I was going to fall right down.
Wow.
So anyway, there you go. That's what happened. So it was just a bizarre feeling. Let's go to the phone quickly. Thomas wants to call in. Thomas, hi, you're on Ground Zero. Go ahead.
Hi, Clyde.
Hey.
I just want to say I actually saw that Man in Black February 1st. Right across the street from Suki's. He was down on the corner.
So you were there?
Well, I was driving by in my car, and I saw this guy, and he just looked really kind of out of place. He was just solid, looked kind of stone cold with a long trench coat on.
Right there by the 405, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was standing on the side of the street, and as I drove by, I had my window cracked, and I kind of hollered at him. Right as I drove by, I went, "Hey!" And he didn't even flinch. And I really thought it was weird, and so I was listening to your show that night, and then, I was trying to call in that night.
Oh, when I first announced it?
Well, I was trying to call in right at 10:30.
Okay.
And I didn't know that, you had a situation going on, but, I mean, and the odd thing about this story is what happened to me that night is that, I went to sleep kind of freaked out, because of the experience of trying to get in and having, your show go to the repeat. I woke up that night to a helicopter, shaking my bed. So, I just I'm not trying to tie everything all together, but it was really kind of strange. I've never had that experience before.
So I guess then you saw me then. Did you see me walking down the street? Did you see me there?
Yeah, I saw you. I was trying to call in and say that I saw you that day, and I was wondering what you thought of that guy, and I actually drew a sketch of this guy.
You did? Can you scan it and send it to either my email or send it to olaf@anomalies.net? We can get it up on the website. That's amazing. I didn't even know that anybody else saw it. I thought, well, there was a lot of cars, of course. That whole area is a car thing. But yeah, I had no idea because I was running to try and get to an appointment.
And it was a lot of traffic, and I tried to actually go around the block. And I normally carry a camera, but I didn't have it.
All right. Well, do the sketch, send it off. Thank you, Thomas, for calling. Thank you so much. Well, we got a witness. That's good. We'll be back with more. Keep it here on Ground Zero.
FM News 101 KXL.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero Radio on FM News 101 KXL.
I was in New York City, walking down one of the main avenues, and I started to encounter a very, very bizarre feeling. It was pure evil. And when I looked up, what I saw was a very tall, lanky man walking towards me, but he seemed out of place and quite odd.
Can't outrun your fate. Can't outrun your fate.
Men in Black. All the Men in Black.
We are the people who make sure things happen according to plan. We monitor the entire world.
Men in Black. All the Men in Black.
You'll see him in your nightmares. You'll see him in your dreams. He'll appear out of nowhere, but he ain't what he seems. You'll see him in your head on the TV screen. Hey, buddy, I'm warning you to turn it off. He's a ghost, he's a god, he's a man, he's a guru. You're one microscopic cog in his catastrophic plan, designed and directed by his red right hand.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. Tonight, the Men in Black. The Black Hat Man. That seems to be the story going around the internet right now. Timothy Green Beckley is a UFO paranormal pioneer. Since the early age of his life is more than less revolved around the paranormal. He has his house he was raised in. He was thought to be haunted. He underwent a number of out-of-body experiences at age 6. He saw his first of 3 UFOs when he was 10. Over the years, he's written over 30 books on everything from rock music to the secret MJ-12 papers. Today is the president of Interlight Global Communications and editor of Conspiracy Journal and Bizarre. He's on now with Claudia Cunningham. We're going to bring both of them on now. Hi, Claudia. Hi, Tim. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, how are you?
How are you, Clyde? Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you both on because of your expertise, and you can explain to the audience about the Men in Black. We have, as a matter of fact, on the front page of groundzeromedia.org, a picture that you're famous for, Tim, a picture of a Man in Black that you took. Where did you take this MIB?
Well, this goes back to the summer of 1966. There was a wave, a flap of UFO sightings. Well, not just sightings, but of creature reports in the metropolitan area, actually in the town of, I believe it was Passaic, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. Some teenagers had been out in the park one evening just after dark, and they had a UFO sighting, but the object apparently had landed, and some beings came out of the ship. I think, if I remember correctly, they were more creature types than humanoids. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't know if they looked like a Mothman or Bigfoot or what, but they were hairy little monsters, if I recall correctly. Okay, so word of the sighting had gotten out. I guess they had reported it to the police, not knowing any better. Mm-hmm. And the UFO investigators came and started interviewing them. Apparently, the sighting went on for quite a few minutes until the young fellows kind of panicked and got squeamish about this because, after all, UFOs are not known to be landing in parks and params. I mean, it just doesn't happen every day, maybe once a week, but not that often, you know. So they got the heck out of there, right? And they went home to their parents, and I think they were all around the 15, 16-year-old age level, you know, teenagers. Mm-hmm. They went home, reported to the parents. There's a big commotion about it, and the UFO investigators came and investigated the case. Now, they were on the perimeter of the park, telling their experiences to this fellow who was a representative of a magazine called Saucer News, which I was on the staff of at the time. Mm-hmm. And the fellow, his name was George Smythe, and the backup man there was John Robinson, John J. Robinson. He's since deceased, but Jack, as we call him, he was a regular guest on like the Long John Nebel show, you know, and
love Long John Nebel.
Oh, I grew up listening to if it wasn't for Long John Nebel, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to Clyde Lewis. I wouldn't be here either if it weren't for Long John Nebel. I love Long John Nebel. Yeah, well, you know, I was a guest on the show a few times, but let's get back to the sighting here. So, anyway, they were revealing the details of their experience, and they noticed one of the researchers happened to notice about a half a block down was this big black like Cadillac or big black car, sedan of some type, and the window was rolled just partly down, and they could see a couple of gentlemen inside the vehicle peering out, just over the top of the glass, and of course the glass was blackened out so you couldn't see in. Well, at first they thought, maybe they were from the police department, just keeping an eye on what was going on there, seeing that there wasn't any vandalism or that the kids weren't drunk or high on drugs. Of course, back in those days, there wasn't very much drugs or alcohol going around, and not among teenagers, anyway. And so they filed a report with the Saucer News magazine. Okay, now, Jack lived over in Jersey City, which you take the PATH train. It takes about 15 minutes to get there from Midtown Manhattan. We had an office on Fifth Avenue. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a small office. And Jim Mosley was a publisher and editor of Saucer News. It had fairly large circulation. For those days, he was like the kingpin of UFO publishing.
Right.
And we kept getting repeated telephone calls from Jack Robinson's wife, Mary. Now, like I say, they lived in Jersey City, which through the PATH train you get there about maybe 15 or 20 minutes. According to Mary, when her husband Jack would go to work in the city, in Manhattan, he would take the PATH train over. He worked in the bank. When he would leave to work, she would go out and do her errands. And she noticed while she would be coming back that there was this strange individual dressed all in black, including the hat and so black shoes and black pants and the whole bit, standing in the adjacent doorway, seemingly keeping tabs on whoever was coming into their apartment building. Now, they didn't have an office or anything there, so that's kind of like peculiar. I don't think they had a lot of in and out activity as far as UFO stuff went. I mean, we did have, I remember having meetings, and Jack always was kind of like the secretary of the group. He kept the minutes and everything, but it was any big deal. There weren't dozens of people, maybe a handful of people might come over in the evening or on the weekend or something. But Jack found that he was having trouble with his telephone. The conversations were being cut off, in the middle of talking to someone. I think some of his files were rifled through when he was out of the house. Nothing missing, but they'd be, the door of the file cabinet would be slit open, and he knew he had closed it. And sometimes some of the stuff would be on the floor and paper scattered around. And it didn't seem possible that anybody else was coming in and out of the apartment because only Jack and his wife Mary had the keys. So she would call us. We'd get to work about 10 o'clock in the morning, and there'd be a message on the machine, or actually I think we had an answering service at that time, call Mary. And we called Mary, and she was getting more concerned about this individual that was apparently hunkering down in the doorway next door. So, we didn't know whether she was like yanking our chain or whether, she was being sincere about this, because she did fool around with the Ouija board, and she was a little bit less nuts and bolts than her husband, Jack. He was more of the stable individual in the house, and Mary was more of the paranormal, the psychic type, talked to spirits, saw fairies in the trees outside, and so forth. So we figured, well, maybe she's just having a relapse or something.
Exactly.
So we decided one morning, Clyde, that we were going to drive over through the Lincoln Tunnel and go over to Palisade Avenue where they lived without telling them. See, so this way we could see if there was anything unusual going on in the neighborhood, any headless creatures or levitating genies or what have you.
Yeah, exactly.
So we get over there, and it's rush hour. And now, rush hour in Jersey City is not rush hour in Manhattan, but you might have 5 or 6 cars on the block, right? And it was pretty, if I remember correctly, it was a pretty narrow street, and people were double parked. I think there was probably a bagel shop on the corner or something, and, and a barber shop. I think if you look at the photograph, you can see a barber pole sticking out there, A kind of an older neighborhood, something you might expect to see like maybe around Mulberry Street, probably the best recollection I could, come up. Anyway, so we decided we're going to pull in over there, and we're going to get to the bottom of this mystery as soon as we can, and just put it all out on the table. So we get there now, and like I say, the traffic is kind of just crawling along, And indeed, there is someone standing in the doorway, and there is a black car parked in the spot, not 100 feet away from where this individual was standing. So Jim Mosley hands me his camera. He was driving, and I was sitting in the passenger seat up front. He hands me his camera and says, "Take some pictures." So I stick it out the window. I took the photograph of the gentleman standing zombie-like in the doorway. In fact, very rigid. I mean, you could just tell this is very unusual. Nobody stands like that. And why is somebody? I don't know. It just isn't. Somebody suggested, well, maybe he was a pallbearer. Well, if he was, he came out of the movie Phantasm or something like that.
Yeah, like the tall man from Phantasm.
Yeah. So anyway, we decided, we took a photograph of the vehicle and of this MIB or MIB or whatever, whoever he was. We're going to go around the block and come back, try to find a parking space or double park like all the other yo-yos, and see if we can have a word to get to the bottom of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this gentleman in a residential neighborhood standing in the doorway of an apartment building of a UFO researcher? So we come back. It takes us probably around maybe 5 or 6, 7 minutes to circle the block because of the traffic in the narrow streets and the people just double parking. We get back, the car is gone, and the gentleman is gone. Well, okay, so he packed up his black bag and went somewhere else. But kind of the strange thing is maybe he had appeared there 7, 8, 9, 10 times to Mary over the period of a couple of weeks. He never showed up again. It's like we frightened. It's kind of like reverse psychology here. Instead of the Men in Black frightening us off, we frightened him off.
Well, most of the time, I had a feeling that when I saw this guy standing, he was near the 405 near Suki's. As a matter of fact, the sketch is on the website right now, just below your Men in Black photo. And it was odd. It did look like that. He was bald, had that hat, he had a coat. I even remember maybe something too that looked like a walking stick. I'm not sure. The recollection is kind of bizarre.
It's great. It's great. You got a witness, that fellow that just called up and had seen it from his, passing by in his automobile. I mean, there's verification if there ever was.
Well, it's a very busy.
You were asking.
Yeah, go ahead.
You were asking what the Men in Black look like. Well, the Men in Black and the Will Smith movie are way too slick.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are always usually wearing crumpled clothes. They look like the Blues Brothers. That's the best way that I can describe them. And you know something? It turns out I found out that Dan Aykroyd, who of course was in the Blues Brothers and co-wrote the script, of course, is a big UFO believer and has even a video out on UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently he's even had a MIB experience. Now, that came after he had a MIB experience while he was talking to Britney Spears on the phone. It's a hard thing to explain, and I don't know whether it really matters.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Aykroyd's had several experiences. I'd love to get him on the air with me because he seems to be the man who, even now, one of his good friends, Fran Drescher, claims that she was abducted by aliens.
I understand that. His father was big in the spiritualist community. In fact, his dad, Dan Aykroyd's father, has a book out on spiritualism, on ghosts that he wrote. Apparently, some of the grandparents were involved in the early spiritualist movement. So they lived in a place up there in Canada. I guess Dan is Canadian,
mm-hmm.
and had all these experiences. He grew up around the paranormal and ghosts and so forth. And, of course, Ghostbusters 3, I think they're just in the middle of shooting that now. And, he's always had an interest in this paranormal. So he's one of the guys up there in Hollywood in the entertainment business who's kind of moved us into what he does for a living, which is really cool.
Any guy who promotes Crystal Skull vodka is all right by me.
And that is, I wouldn't plug alcohol on the air, but that is pretty good vodka.
Yeah,
I got one on my tiki bar here. I'll tell you.
Timothy Green Beckley is with us tonight on Ground Zero, and we're glad to have him here. Claudia Cunningham, we'll be hearing from her coming up as well. Have them both on the air discussing the Men in Black, the MIBs. I saw a Man in Black on February 1st right there on the 405, right there near Suki's, 4th area, right in there. We had a witness, Thomas, who said that he saw that same Man in Black. He sketched the Man in Black picture. He's got it on my website right now, and also we have Timothy Beckley's picture that he took as well of a Man in Black. Coming up, we also have a caller who said he may have seen one in Newburgh. 503-417-9595 or 1-877-733-1011. They seem to be all over. We'll find out where coming up on Ground Zero.
Got an opinion? Call KXL now. 503-417-9KXL or 877-733-1011. This is Ground Zero on FM News 101 KXL. Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
Tonight on Ground Zero, we're talking about the Men in Black with Timothy Green Beckley and Claudia Cunningham. Having them both on the show is quite an honor. Tonight discussing the Men in Black and the history of the Men in Black and what to look for. In fact, we've got Matt right now calling in from Portland. Matt, hi, you're on Ground Zero.
Hey, Clyde.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, not much. Hey, I just wanted to say, I drive a truck, and I have a route that's in Newburgh. And I listened to your show, and I had to call in because I've seen this. And I saw a guy, I don't know if you're familiar with the town or not.
Yeah, I've been through many times.
So, if you're going through 99W and you're heading towards, like, McMinnville, right before you get to, take a right and you got George Fox University, there was a guy standing right there. And I saw him, and I thought, nothing much of it. And I continued off my route. Well, I have, a lot of stops over there. I was there for 4 or 5 hours. The guy never moved. And I'm looking at this guy. He's lifeless. And he just, he's staring off into space, kind of, but, looking back and forth. But he just never really had any emotion, nothing at all to him. And I had to call him and let you know. I mean, it was just so, everything you're saying about this, it was just so weird to see this guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point. I mean, you get a feeling when you see these guys. It's not like, anybody walking by in a coat and a hat doesn't faze you. But there's something about a Man in Black. It's him by his mannerisms and by how he seems like he's a robot. He seems like he's plastic, or he seems like he's a zombie in a coat. Claudia?
Zombies.
Claudia, what do you say to that? Do you concur that this is what we're looking at as lifeless types of beings in coats?
I agree with that, but I did see one actually at a shopping center, which I'll tell you about a little bit later. But my guy was probably about 5'4", maybe 5'4 and a half, completely in black. In fact, his outfit looked like it just came out of Macy's. I mean, he looked like he just bought all new clothes. Even the shirt had crease in it. His pants were creased. But there was something, I can't explain it, something in the smile. He was very creepy. He moved normally.
Yeah.
But it kind of goes into the first part of my story that I'll tell you. It was kind of a confirmation of what my friend had seen in the cemetery.
Okay.
Which is very haunted. But I have no doubt in my mind, thinking about it, that that's exactly what I saw.
Well, Matt,
but he was short.
Matt, you hear Claudia, what she's saying, and we're going to hear her story coming up in the next hour. Matt, thank you so much for sharing that with us tonight.
Hey, no problem. And just to let her know, it was kind of the same thing. He didn't have much movement to his body, but he moved his head.
Yeah, it's just strange like that. That's for sure.
It's strange, and I have a lot more to add to that.
Well, we'll hold you over. We'll hold you over just for a little bit, okay? Hold on. We'll be right with you. We're going to be back with more of Matt's story. We'll also hear from Claudia and her story about her Man in Black encounter. Coming up on Ground Zero is Timothy Green Beckley is with us, and your stories as well. 503-417-9595 or 1-877-733-1011. We'll keep it here on Ground Zero. I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. Ground Zero brought to you by Portland Gold Buyers. Go to portlandgoldbuyers.com and click in the upper right-hand corner. You can go in and get involved with the seminar on February 25th. That'll be amazing. You should be able to learn about how to invest in silver and gold. Oscar was telling me he just picked up on some gold pandas that were really inexpensive. that you can invest in. You don't have to be rich to buy gold. You can buy a little bit of gold and watch it mature. Little by little, it all seems to add up. And he can show you how you can do it. So you can make some dividends and some backup to the currency that's dying on the vine for sure. Go to PortlandGoldBuyers.com. Click in the upper right-hand corner for the seminar for February 25th. That seminar, of course, is $50. You put in Clyde Space Now in the shopping cart. You get to enter in for $40. And that'll be on February 25th. You can also call 971-222-3435. That's 971-222-3435. Be sure and do that and contact Oscar. A lot of people have been contacting and asking about buying silver rounds and gold and also the seminar. Be sure to check that out, too. Portland Gold Buyers, PortlandGoldBuyers.com. Tonight, we are very happy to have on the program two remarkable people. It's Timothy Green Beckley, Claudia Cunningham, tonight on Ground Zero to talk about the infamous Men in Black. Now, I seem to have a lot of encounters with the Men in Black. I've had at least 3 that I know of. I'm going to bring Matt on to finish his story. Matt, you were talking about Newburgh. You said you want to add one more thing to the story about the man standing there near the college. What did you see?
Well, it wasn't anything to really add to that story.
Oh, well, you said you wanted to add something to it, right?
Well, yeah, of course I wanted to add to it. I was just saying, there's a lot of things that, I see, listening to your shows and listening to other shows, and, it's people have came out plenty of times before saying that, the government knows about extraterrestrials and the government knows about these things that are going on. Mm-hmm. And now you see these huge camps being built.
Yeah.
And all over the country, and you see these. You've heard of these trains that are being built with shackles, and these train cars that are being built with shackles in them. And I'm going, what is really going on here?
Yeah. Well, nobody really knows, and
it makes a guy worry when you start seeing 90-degree angled. I can't remember the name of those clouds that you were.
The contrail that you saw. Everybody saw that. They were baffled by that. That was the day after that Man in Black was seen in Oregon, Portland.
Exactly. And you start seeing things like that, and you start seeing. I work at night, and all right, I don't anymore. Sorry, but I worked at night for 5 years. So when I get off work, I always I'm a night hawk. So I look up and I see stuff in the sky all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, what is really going on here? And what are they not telling us? And what is being prepared? And, it makes a person just worry.
Well, you shouldn't worry, Matt. You shouldn't worry. You should prepare yourself. And that's why I've been telling you should do these things that I explained to you to do. It's like I was explaining to a friend of mine. I said, I bring on sponsors that I feel that need to help you prepare. And that is exactly why I have people like Portland Preparedness Center. I have people like Portland Gold Buyers, and, of course, Legal Shield, which is a new sponsor of the show. Protect you with lawyers. Get on prepaid legal. You have a lawyer for you if you need it. Things are changing. Laws are changing. That's why it's important that we prepare ourselves. Once again, Timothy Green Beckley and Claudia Cunningham. Claudia, you were going to relate a story about your Man in Black encounter. I wanted to hear about this because it sounded fascinating. You were talking about, first of all, one you saw in a shopping mall, but then there was another thing you wanted to relate to. You didn't quite get to it. I'd like to have you talk about it.
Okay. Well, I'll start by saying I've always rather embraced or been interested in the unknown or the arcane, the mysterious all my life. But I guess you might say my entree into the Men in Black situation actually started with an incident in this haunted cemetery near Albany, New York, which is where I live, which is about 140 miles north of Manhattan. And it started in 1973, and I remember because I just got my 73 Mustang convertible, which I was very proud of. And my sister-in-law and I were out riding around, and her little daughter, who was like 3 years old at the time, my niece Lisa, was with us. And we were feeling silly, so I said, let's go in the cemetery. The cemetery is really an imposing place. It's like something out of a Gothic horror movie. Mm-hmm. And it was near dusk, and we pulled in, and we were like the only ones there as far as I could see. And there are these rows and rows of very ornate vaults or crypts for the actually it was for the aristocracy of the area.
Mm-hmm.
Albany was originally a Dutch settlement in the 1600s, and a lot of the founding fathers, the moneyed, the landed gentry, is what I guess you could call them, are buried there. And one of the vaults belonged to, it said John Boyd Thatcher, which got my attention right off the bat. He was a very notable early mayor of Albany. So I said to Dottie, my sister-in-law, I said, let's go over and take a look in this thing. And she said, oh, no, you're crazy. I'm not going to go over there. So I took the baby by the hand, little Lisa, and I probably got within maybe 4 feet of the thing, and it sounded like, and the only thing I can equate it to is someone who had a metallic something throwing it against the wall on the inside of this crypt. It was a bang, and I literally jumped out of my skin. I threw that kid over my shoulder, jumped in that car, and I think we went out of there 40 miles an hour backwards. I mean, it was really scary. Mm-hmm. And I kind of put that away, and, it was just an interesting story that I told through the years. But, synchronicity will have its way. And years later, I had come in contact with Tim Beckley's really great book on the Men in Black called The Silencers, which will give you nightmares, which is why I love it. And about once a year, I'll get the book out and I'll read it. And I was really into the, reading it one night. And I don't know, maybe a week later, 10 days later, my friend Linda called me. Now, Linda is a nurse at local Veterans Hospital in Albany. And I think her experience with the occult, or whatever you want to call it, mm-hmm. goes as far as maybe going to a tarot card reader. She was completely in the dark about anything like this. She recently moved across the street from Albany Road.
You there? Are you there, Claudia?
Yes.
Okay,
Hello?
Go ahead. Yeah, you got cut off.
Okay.
Go ahead. Tell more your story again.
Yeah. Anyway, I did get a phone call about a year and a half ago after reading Tim's book for the 100th time, and it was from my friend Linda, who's a nurse at the Veterans Hospital in Albany. And she was all excited, and, she's 56 years old, and she's not a kook. She's very, level-headed. And she said, I know that you're really interested in weird things. And she says, I really need your opinion on something. I said, sure. Well, first, can I just tell you about this cemetery? Because this leads to the Men in Black. It's only take a minute.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, I want to set the scene. I did a little... I went on the Internet and got some information about it. It's really an interesting place. Years and years ago, the city of Albany was flooded, and some of the cemeteries, the coffins came to the surface. So the founding fathers moved the cemetery 4 miles out of the city proper to a little village called Menands. Mm-hmm. And it's the Albany Rural Cemetery. It's on a hill, and it's huge. It really is. It has a little... hills within hills, little tiny side roads, gravel roads. So one day, she said, after work I was bored and I figured I'd take a historical tour. Well, many notable people are buried there, like a president of the United States by the name of Chester Arthur, who is one of the more little-known presidents.
Right.
There's Civil War heroes. There's the Secretary of the Navy under Roosevelt. Everybody's in there. And the big star of the place, which I didn't know, and I almost fell over backwards, Charles Fort himself, the father of the paranormal.
Really? Charles Fort's buried there?
Yes.
I'm a Fortian myself, so I find that very fascinating.
Yeah, I didn't find this out until I did a search on the Internet after Linda told me this, and I almost died. So anyway, she said this is what happened to her. She went through the big iron gates into the main entrance, and you go over a little railroad track. On the left is a Gothic-looking gray stone building that's the office that contains all the information on who's buried there. Mm-hmm. A little bit up is the crematorium, which is so creepy. I can't believe it. And after that, there's a side hill. And Linda said, I went up this hill, and it was a gravel road. And that day, you know what milkweed is?
Yes.
It's that annoying, it was like all over the cemetery. It was all over her car. She had her windshield wipers on. It was, and no one was there. And she said she had her windows open. And if anyone was coming in back or in front or to the side, she would have heard it because of the gravel driveway. And no one was there. And she said, I pulled over. And she said, I looked down to take the keys out of the ignition, and within, a split second, she says, I looked in my rear mirror, and here was this huge, big, black, shiny SUV, military-looking thing, like a huge Hummer with jet black windows, no milkweed on this thing at all. It looked brand new. She said it was really, really eerie, and she says it just took my breath away. And she said the thing that went through my mind was either I was going to get robbed or killed or something. She didn't equate it with anything supernatural. But she says I decided to put the car in forward and just kind of creep away and see if this thing was going to follow me. Instead, it backed up, and it appeared to go down one of the side roads. So she watched it until the top of the thing disappeared. And she has a temper. I mean, me, I would have had a heart attack, but she was going to follow it. So she said, I turned around and I went exactly where this thing disappeared into. And nothing was there. No road, only a chain link fence. Beyond the fence, nothing but graves.
Oh, my gosh.
So, with that, she says, I turned around, went down the road, and right in front of the office, the thing was parked. And she says, I knew that thing was waiting for me. I just had a feeling. Outside of this thing, on the driver's side, like he was talking to the driver, only the window was up, was a tall, weird-looking man with a pork pie hat, like something you'd see in a 50s crime movie, like a Blues Brothers hat, all dressed in black. A dark-complected man, wrap-around black sunglasses, the whole thing. And she said, I was watching him in my mirror, and she says, I just punched it. She says, I stepped on the ignition. I wanted to get out of there. And this guy just vanished right into thin air, just disappeared. So I was breathless. I was so excited. So she doesn't have a computer, or didn't back then, so we got on my computer, and I kind of Googled the cemetery. I found all this stuff out.
Right.
Come to find out, it's haunted by, and I quote, sinister men in black, black vehicles, a black dog, orbs that disappear or appear at dusk, and a couple who float over the headstones holding hands.
Well, interesting that you bring up that the cemetery is haunted by men in black. I want to run something by both of you. We're taking a break. I want to run some things by both of you. Since I've had encounters with men in black, I've done research on men in black, and they seem to be thousands of years old. A lot of these encounters of men in black, they've been talked about in several areas. They've been talked about biblically. They've been talked about in many other... I mean, it's not really that much of a modern phenomenon, even though we do see them. And as I said before, or perhaps you have this complex feeling whenever you see a man in black, for some reason they strike you as out of the ordinary. Something that sticks out like a sore thumb. It doesn't belong there, and you're thinking, what is that doing there? Is the man just standing there dressed nicely, or is it something else? And it gives you this feeling of dread. It's a strange, unexplainable feeling. If anyone's experienced an encounter with a man in black, a shadowy figure, perhaps in a cloak or in a hat, I'd like to hear from you. 503-417-9595 or 1-877-733-1011. We'll be back. Keep it here on Ground Zero.
FM News 101 KXL.
Got an opinion? Call KXL now. 503-417-9KXL or 877-733-1011.
Everyone is in on the secrets, and big things are being planned. Call Clyde Lewis now. Ground Zero.
So coming up on Ground Zero this Friday, we're going to have David John Oates doing the news again, and we're going to do reversals on the news. There was something that really, that Dr. Burgess had called to tell me about David John Oates, and he went to the get-together that was there in West Lynn, And I know a number of people went because he reported to me that it had happened. But one of the discussions that went on during his free seminar was the idea of a career opportunity with reverse speech, which I thought was interesting because he had told me that with this new deal that they were making in London, that they would have all kinds of work available for people who want to become trainers or at least reverse speech analysts. And I thought, okay, that'd be fine, maybe just a few bucks here and there or maybe something like that. But no. This is something where the money is good because there's going to be a lot of stuff there's a lot of stuff going on where you can make, from what I heard, depending, and I don't know, maybe David will have to tell us this when he comes on, but you could make close to, if not more than $100 an hour doing this reverse speech analyzing. And you become a reverse speech analyst. The only thing is, though, is that you have to go to you have to learn from him. And if you're willing to put in the time and the effort and the investment, you actually can learn how to do the reverse speech, do reverse speech analyzing. And that would be great because then you could be an analysis. You do analysis for reverse speech and get paid a lot of money to do it. He told me that there are a lot of opportunities available, and he will tell you more about that. And I want to just make sure that it's clear that David John Oates will be on again Friday, and you can ask him about that. Or you can go to reversespeech.com. Reversespeech.com is the place to go to find out more about the opportunities that are available. And you can also hear about the seminars that he's having. He's here in Portland for a long time, so he's going to be doing these seminars, and his information is available right now at reversespeech.com. Find out how you can get a career in this, because, look, I can think of worse things to do than listen to reverse speech and analyze it. So he has some career opportunities available with all this new stuff, this movie that's coming out, this documentary, all this stuff. He needs these people available to be analysts. You can call tonight 503-417-9595. That's 9KXL or 1-877-733-1011. Tonight we're talking about the Men in Black. Have you seen a man dressed in black, no eyebrows, bald, with a hat? Some people call him Black Hat Man. We know him as the MIBs. Tonight we talk more about these strange people coming up on Ground Zero. Don't go away. I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. Tonight we talk about the Men in Black. What are they? Who are they? What is their purpose? Tonight we're taking your calls at 503-417-9595. That's 9KXL or 1-877-733-1011 as we discuss the Men in Black. They're nothing like what you see in the movie MIB. That's kind of a comic relief thing. Most of the time these guys are pretty sinister and pretty scary. Tonight Timothy Green Beckley is with us, and also Claudia Cunningham to talk more about the MIB. And I just wanted to ask Timothy, you've written books for 30 years. What's the difference between? In fact, somebody joked in my Facebook saying some guy in an overcoat must be an MIB. What makes an MIB different? What makes them stick out? And what are we looking at when we see a typical man in black? Are you there, Timothy? Timothy, hello. Are you there? Claudia, are you there?
I'm here.
I don't know what happened to Timothy. We're going to have to find out what happened to Tim. We'll just call him right back. But anyway, I mean, when you saw your man in black, what made him different? I mean, when you see somebody on the street and he looks out of place, what made him different for you?
Well, this happened a couple of months after this thing with my girlfriend happened, and it was on my mind a lot. That's all I could think about. And I guess I needed a confirmation that this really happened. And so one day I was over to the shopping center. I had my mother in the car with me, and we pulled up in front of one of the dollar stores, and I left her in the car, went in, got my purchase, and came back. And I started the car up, and I noticed a big black SUV to the right of where we were parked. And I joked to my mother. I said, "Hey, maybe that's one of those guys that Linda saw." Mm-hmm. We kind of chuckled. I no longer. I just got the words out of my mouth, and from in back of this black SUV came this little man, and he stopped right outside where my mother was sitting, and he literally bent over and like peeked in the window. And I saw, he had a hat on like John Lennon wore in the 60s. It was like a black visor, black cap, a black, like I said before, brand new black outfit, black shirt, black, everything was black sunglasses. And he stepped up on the curb, and he just turned around and took his glasses down and kind of looked at me. And the creepy smile, it was not right. You know how, like you said, something is not right about this guy.
Right.
And then I thought, well, maybe he's a chauffeur. Maybe there's a limo parked, somewhere. But there was nothing there. He really stood out.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't belong there.
There was actually a movie that I saw. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It had Betty Davis and Oliver Reed called Burnt Offerings. And
I missed that one.
In that film, and the creepiest thing ever, they have this hearse that goes through. This strange hearse that comes driving by, and the guy who drives the hearse is this thin, wiry, pale man with these glasses, these black glasses, and he looks like a hearse driver. And he comes in, and Betty Davis is screaming in agony. She's in pain because she's sick, and he turns out to be like a mortician, and he takes this casket and throws it at her and kills her. And it's just a really frightening, and it's like the tall man of Phantasm, as Timothy had mentioned, that these men in black, I mean, they just don't look like they belong in the scenery. And I mean, when I have this sketch that I put on the website, doesn't do justice to what I saw. This guy didn't. I mean, I'll tell you this, okay? I have, and I can't explain why. Maybe some people can relate to this. Have you ever seen somebody who's put a nylon stocking over their head? Mm-hmm. And when they put a nylon stocking over their head, they lose all definition to the face because it scrunches it together, it pulls it apart. That's what this guy looked like. He didn't look right. He didn't look like he was formed well. He didn't have any detail to his face, really. He had no eyebrows. He was bald. He had this black hat. He had an overcoat on. No, he didn't look like a guy that was cold. In fact, that day was a nice day. It wasn't a bad day. It wasn't cold at all. He didn't look like a cold man in the wintertime walking the streets. He looked like a guy with a nylon stocking over his head, wearing a hat, and he gave me this look like he didn't know what he didn't know what I was. I said hello to him. He looked at me like, "What did you say to me?" And then I turned around. I went to snap a picture of him. Couldn't get him on camera. And that doesn't mean, and somebody asked the question, no, you can take pictures of these guys. I didn't get a picture of the guy, so I wondered what was going on. I followed. I didn't want to stalk him, but I certainly think that, I mean, he disappeared. He ducked out of the way because I think he knew that I was following him. But it just seemed to me that the circumstances and the synchronicities that happened on that night, the night that I collapsed while I was on the air, the idea that I've seen Men in Black before show up, especially when it comes to UFO or flying saucer or anything like that. They have some sort of a organization that backs them up, or they're doing this on their own. They think that they're born this way to be this way or whatever. I interviewed a guy, actually. I met him at the Rialto bar when I first moved to Portland. He called himself Mr. N. I interviewed him. He claimed to be a man in black. He was another bald-looking, strange guy with weird features. He had spikes in his lips. He looked weird as heck. He was wearing black.
Like my ex-husband.
Well, he just seemed to be peculiar, and he actually said that this was prior to 9/11. He actually said that the Men in Black were gathering to bring us into our next event that was going to thrust us into our new thought process, and it would involve the deaths of many thousands of people in a major city. And he said that this is what was going to happen. And I have the interview in my vault somewhere, but people who are fans of the show, who have been listening to my show for as many years as they have been listening, know that I interviewed a gentleman on the show that stated for the record that he was a man in black. He worked as a man in black. He says he had no organization behind him. He said it was like an octopus with no head. He said you cut off one tentacle, there's another person ready to do the job. They move about doing what they do without any thought of how it might harm or otherwise help somebody. They do what needs to be done, and that is their job. And that's exactly what he said to me. What's that?
They seem to appear a lot of times before a tragedy, like the Silver Bridge in the Mothman prophecy by John Keel.
Yes, exactly. They show up. They show up before tragedies. They show up after tragedies. It's kind of like the whole story of the agents from the Matrix, or the observers from Fringe, or the Adjustment Bureau. That was another movie that was dealing with, and Dark City, where it has to do with keeping the timeline intact, or keeping the motions of whatever it is that's supposed to happen intact, as if they know simultaneously, both past, present, and future, what's supposed to happen, and they make it happen, and if it doesn't happen the way it's supposed to, they give it that push, or they give it that shove, and that's why they appear. So they always show up in times where they tell you, you didn't see this, or you weren't a part of this, and it just seems to be kind of odd the way they just pop up out of nowhere. Let's bring Timothy back. I know we lost Timothy. Timothy, when we're talking about MIBs, and I was talking with Claudia about this, we're talking about MIBs. What sets them apart? Why is it? What can we do to say, okay, we're looking at an MIB. This is a man in black, other than some guy who's just wearing a coat and a tie and just, I guess, missed the bus for church. How can we tell the difference?
What church would they go to?
Well, I have an idea.
Well, the one thing I think that stands out usually is they do something odd that just doesn't fit the mold of a normal person. Like, I remember one time there was a doctor who had been investigating a UFO case. He'd actually had the witness in his house, I think the day previous, and he saw this man. He came up the driveway, stood by the door, and the doctor, I guess he had his office in his house and so forth, and he went to the door because he figured, well, why isn't the guy knocking or something? And he's just standing there very, very rigid. Well, he thought obviously the guy must be sick or something wrong with him, so he tells him, well, come into the office and sit down. Well, the guy stood like just comatose up against the wall, never said anything in the beginning. And then he started just repeating that he wanted to know about this particular UFO event to turn over his files and so forth. But he was odd looking. I mean, it looked like the fellow was very pale, and he had like lipstick on, which wouldn't be that unusual in this day and age, I suppose. But it was like he couldn't draw a straight line. It was like looking like Clarabelle the Clown or something like that. And
well, it was funny because I was telling Claudia about this man in black I saw. He looked like he was wearing a nylon stocking over his head. His definition was off. Something was wrong about him. He looked like
and they. I remember one time the guy was eating was offered some Jello or something to eat, but didn't seem to know how to eat it. I mean, just things that just don't seem to fit the pattern. But, of course, the really weird things would be is when they come and go at will. I mean, this all started back, for the record. Well, of course, Maury Island, there off the coast of Washington State, that was just around the time of the Kenneth Arnold, sighting back in 1947.
Right.
These two fishermen were out on their boat with their dog, and this UFO came over, and the bottom of the craft opened up, and it looked like some material, liquid slag or metal, molten metal or something came out and fell all over the river there and killed the dog, and injured wrecked the boat, I guess, on them, And in fact, Kenneth Arnold, who was the first UFO sighter, he coined the term flying saucer. He went to investigate it, and while he was in the hotel room interviewing the witnesses, apparently there was a newspaper reporter who knew exactly what was going on and what was being said in the hotel room. There was an invisible intruder or something like that. Albert K. Bender, who Ray Barker wrote the book, They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers. Well, that was the first really inkling to the public about any of this. The book came out in 1955 or 1956, and it was an instant hit. And Barker told about the silencing of this fellow Albert K. Bender. Albert K. Bender ran the International Flying Saucer Bureau out of Bridgeport, Connecticut. And he put out a fairly well-received UFO publication called, I think it was called Space Review.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, he reported these sightings of the members of the organization. I think he had about 2,500 members. This would have been the first UFO group, maybe around 1953 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he stumbled upon the secret to the origin of where flying saucers come from. These three men materialized inside his bedroom, right? And they were dressed like we've just been describing, the men in black with the hats and so forth, and the dark trench coats. And they warned him telepathically to give up his investigation into the flying saucers, or that something serious would happen to him or members of his family.
Right.
And they mentioned the name of a researcher who lived in Australia. Bender had this International Flying Saucer Bureau had a worldwide organization, and he had branches all over the world. He had one in Australia that was run by John Stewart. Now, in my book, Curse of the Men in Black UFO Terrorists, I print the entire story, the manuscript that John Stewart did, and he tells about how his group was investigating a UFO wave over, I think, Sydney, Australia at the time, and they were having some low-level sightings. Some of them, in fact, right at high noon, where hundreds of people were observing these things on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they had the same thing. They had these invisible beings that would materialize in their headquarters, and one of them was this really terribly smelling creature. I mean, wasn't Men in Black in the sense that we think about it. And there was a woman who was involved. She was like vice president of the group, and she was actually molested by this creature that would come into her apartment at night. Finally, they closed down the organization, and the last that anyone had heard of the investigator is that he was standing on the top of a escalator in a department store there, and someone or something totally unseen apparently came up behind him, gave him a shove, and he went flying down the escalator head first or something like that.
Well, and of course, that also John Keel had written when the Mothman, actually when the Mothman prophecies were being written, he spoke of a woman that lived in Point Pleasant who was actually being harassed by a man in black and threatening that he would kill her. They were also saying that a number of the men in black would go door to door during this time, offering them these pills, and when they had the pills analyzed, they found out they were for urinary tract infections, and they were giving these pills for urinary tract infections to people in Point Pleasant, and I just felt that it was just bizarre how these men in black would do these crazy antics during this whole time of the Mothman sightings.
Well, see, now I think if people, I've come to the conclusion after all these years, is that most of the UFO phenomena is paranormal in nature. We are not, per se, dealing with visitors from other planets. Now, every once in a while, there may be a spaceship, as we think of it, coming through this way. But these are beings, whoever they may be, and I don't even think that they're necessarily beings as we think of living, creatures.
Mm-hmm.
They are some sort of plasmatic intelligence. That's the best way that I can describe them.
Mm-hmm.
And they are able to actually, now, these men in black, I think, are kind of their agents. And these are people, these are earthlings, as far as I can detect, who have actually mentally been taken over. They've kind of had the souls sucked out of them.
You're very right, and I'll tell you why. Because the man in black that allegedly told me he was a man in black that I interviewed said that he felt as though he was called. All of a sudden, one day he woke up and he realized that this is what his calling was, and that somehow something took over, and he renamed himself. He called himself Mr. N, and that's what he called himself after that. That he was a normal guy.
I did a book.
What's that?
Mm-hmm. I did a book called Round Trip to Hell in a Flying Saucer, which is available on Kindle as well as a print edition. And we describe in there some of these people and the shenanigans and how they just seem to have actually had their souls taken away from them.
Yeah.
and maybe even possessed by them.
And we'll talk about that coming out, too. Timothy Green Beckley and also Claudia Cunningham with us on Ground Zero tonight. We'll be back with more. Keep it here on Ground Zero.
Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
Tonight we have Timothy Green Beckley, UFO paranormal pioneer, and also Claudia Cunningham with us on the show talking about the Men in Black. There is a meme now going around the internet about Black Hat Man, and it is literally a man in black. People have been discussing that this Black Hat Man also shows up and is in the same realm as the shadow people. And that people have seen shadowy figures in their dreams, their nightmares. They have shown up. People are dreaming these things. They're dreaming about these men with black hats and glasses. Now, as I said, I saw what appeared to be a man in black. Now, people say, well, it was just a guy wearing a suit and tie, and it was cold. He was wearing an overcoat. No, I saw, and, of course, the person that I met with an appointment saw, men in overcoats. These men we saw having coffee had hats, and they had hair, but the one I saw looked like he had no detail on his face. It looked just bizarre. He looked like he had a stocking over his face, and I didn't want to stalk him. I didn't want to follow him, but I certainly know what I saw, and it wasn't some guy just wearing an overcoat. And I was fine, but then that night after I had the sighting, I collapsed while I was on the air. And it has been said that if you come in contact with these guys or whatever, they can vex you. I had an encounter with a man in black in 1995, 1996. After my encounter, my car was bombed, and it was destroyed, literally. And that's a matter of record, and it's just been the situation. Men in black seem to come around. 503-417-9595 or 1-877-733-1011. We'll be back. Tonight, talking about the Men in Black. Of course, saw Man in Black. Saw Man in Black that was over there by Suki's. It's a bar just south of town. Hanging out near the freeway, and he just seemed out of place. Didn't seem like he belonged there. That's the trouble with the Men in Black. You see them, and you're wondering, what am I looking at? And they tend to throw you off a bit. You say, gosh, they just have this countenance of death, or they look like they have no details of their face. They almost look pale and skull-like. Some people even say alien-like, because they look plastic. The jaw looks plastic. They don't look real. And I guess you'd have to see one to understand one, because a lot of people, I'm sure, probably don't understand what they're looking for. I mean, we're not just looking for guys dressed in black suits and ties. We tend to think that this is what it all is because of the movies and the Blues Brothers, and also I always thought the agents that they're a cross between what you see in Dark City and what you saw in the Matrix. Wouldn't you agree with that, Claudia?
I would say so. The one that I saw, he didn't look completely abnormal, but just his actions and the way he just kind of dropped his glasses down to the middle of his nose and kind of looked at me and kind of gave me a creepy smile, and it was almost like he was saying to me, well, you wanted to see one, well, here I am,
Mm-hmm.
It was chilling.
Or that smile on their face, they look like they're about to eat you. They have that grin on their face saying, if that door wasn't locked, I'd be in there right now just, eating your brain or something.
That's right,
That's the kind of, they have the look of death. They have the look of this, you just can't. When I met, the one Man in Black that I met before my car was bombed, actually, believe it or not, came off as he was very he seemed like he was from the 1950s, because he said things like nifty, and he said things like keen. Oh, that's keen. And I'm thinking, keen? That sounds all peachy, and he used phrases like that, and I'm thinking, who the hell is this guy? And he had a mustache. That was kind of bizarre too. He had a little mustache, a little thin mustache near his lip. It wasn't like a big, thick one. He just had this little, thin, hairy mustache that almost like it was penciled in above his lip. He was just a weird-looking guy.
Wow. Well, like Tim says, the one guy, he had like lipstick because he had no mouth, so he had to paint on lips. It's bizarre. and I know in one of the books, I think it was John Keel again, might have been the Mothman Prophecies. One of these characters walked into a luncheonette and ordered a steak.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came, he just stared at it. He didn't know what to do with the utensils, so the waitress had to show him. And another guy tried to drink Jell-O. He didn't know what it was. So, I mean, they're really far out.
Well, it's like
whatever they are.
One of the most interesting shows on TV right now is Fringe, and one of the observers is named September, and he actually shows up in one of the episodes. I can't remember which it is, but it's an episode where an earthquake is about to happen near a work site. He comes in, he sits down at this restaurant, and he orders himself a sandwich. It's a roast beef sandwich. He piles it high with roast beef. Then he piles it with about 16 jalapeno peppers, and then he piles on pepper, and then he eats the sandwich. And when they asked him why he does that, he says, I don't have any taste buds. I can't taste anything, so I have to have something with flavor in it. I can't taste anything. So that's
really bizarre.
That's the weird stuff about these Men in Black. They're just these outcast misfits that look like, on one hand, you could make fun of them, beat the crap out of them, but then they also give you this look like they could kill you if you get in the way of what their agenda is.
I know one. Sorry.
Go ahead, Tim.
I think what we have here, though, too, we have two different things, Fal. We talk about the Men in Black, but they're part of a larger group that I would define as the UFO silencers. Mm-hmm. Some of which could be government agents or foreign agents. They could be representatives of some secret organization or secret society who is trying to prevent people from talking about this. Now, there was an episode, a big flap of sightings, a big wave of sightings over the Waunakee Reservoir in New Jersey back in around the same time, actually, come to think around 1965.
Wow, do you know the vortex over Waunakee, the time vortex at Waunakee? You know about that?
Well, I investigated that case and I wrote it up for Fate magazine back at the time when it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
There was an incident that was reported, and I wasn't there when it happened, but supposedly a car was driving on one of the side roads around the reservoir, and it disappeared right in front of the witnesses who was following it.
Right, exactly. It just disappeared into a fog. Right.
Okay, well, yeah, what I was going to say, though, is that the sightings got so plentiful in that area. It was police officers and reservoir security guards and all that were seeing this thing, and the one UFO came right down over the reservoir and beamed some kind of ray down on the ice and put a hole in the ice, which was quite thick at the time. And they had actually a meeting, a town hall meeting of witnesses and all, because they were getting pretty upset about this. They didn't know whether the UFOs were a hostile nature, but they certainly didn't seem to be overly friendly either. Now, during the town hall meeting or following the town hall meeting, they noticed some of the witnesses, including the mayor and the chief of police, noticed that there were some strange and odd people there that were hanging around this meeting, which was mainly made up of town residents, residents, the people that had sightings and wanted to know what was going on and directly concerned them and so forth. Anyway, there were these agents, mysterious agents there that looked like they were, CIA or FBI types, dressed in black and the sunglasses and the whole bit.
Mm-hmm.
At first, when they asked for identification, they pulled out membership cards belonging to the National Investigations Committee on UFO, Major Kehoe's group, which is very active at the time, and a lot of these were scientific types, and I would call them nerds and stuff like that, with their notebooks and taking notes and stuff like this, thinking that they would gain some knowledge about the UFO phenomena from doing this. Anyway, though, there was one particular witness who had a very close sighting of the object, and he was taken aside by one of these agents, and the guy said, we'd prefer it if you don't talk about what you've seen, and is sort of adding a little bit more clout to his warning. He pushed aside the black suit jacket that he was wearing, and there was a pistol in the waistband of the jacket, the pants he was wearing.
Uh-huh.
Of course, obviously, for about 35 years or so, this individual was so frightened that he just backed off and refused to tell anybody about what he had seen. And I did see a post about this finally where he started discussing the fact that he was actually threatened. Now, people ask me, they say, well, have anybody actually been killed or injured and all? Well, maybe yes, maybe no. It's one of these things, the dead don't tell no tales.
Well, and in my situation with my car, it was basically, see, what had happened is when my show first went on the air, we offered $10 million for proof of a UFO. We bought out an insurance policy. This was a publicity stunt we did. It was we spent $500 on a premium down payment for a $10 million UFO insurance policy that if someone brought us a UFO on a flatbed or a flying saucer on a flatbed truck or something, and it was all this criteria that they had to meet, otherwise they wouldn't get the $10 million. It was a publicity stunt. It was almost impossible to do this. So what happened is we had a thing on the day that the swallows were supposed to come back to Capistrano and the buzzards are supposed to come back to Ohio. We did a thing where the UFOs are supposed to land in Utah, and if that UFO lands, it could mean $10 million for that lucky person who is bringing this UFO. Well, what happened is that while we're doing this little bagel social out in the middle of the parking lot, and I actually, with another colleague of mine, made a UFO landing strip. It was a round circle with a big alien head in it that said UFO on it. We were actually, we had news crews there waiting for the UFOs to land. Of course, they just knew it was an interesting story at the time. We were serving bagels, and my colleague at the time said, because there was these two men standing there, they were wearing black coats, they looked strange and out of the ordinary, and he laughed and he says, hey, you guys over there standing by the bagels, you guys look like you need to cheer up and have a cup of coffee. And they just stood there, stoic, didn't do a damn thing. And he says, oh, come on, you guys act like you work for the government. Where do you work? And they said, both in unison, the government. And it was almost like it was rehearsed. And what had happened is that afterwards, a guy came up to me. He showed me a picture that looked like an alien that was out in the middle of the West Desert. I posted it on my website. That was the biggest mistake I could have done because at the time, it was something that they wanted me to take down. I refused to take down. And when I refused to take it down, I got in my car one morning. I hit the gas, and there was a magnesium pack on my carburetor that ignited because the gas got into the spark plugs, ignited the pack, and blew the hood off the front of my car. And it frightened me, and it scared me, and I just didn't know what to do after that. And I have to admit, and I also had a guy come in who was dressed in black who videotaped me. And then he said it was he said he was with the insurance company. He says, I'm with the insurance company, I want to videotape this. I says, well, I don't have any insurance on my car. And he said to me, he says, well, no, this is insurance. This is our insurance for the apartment complex. And then at the end of the videotaping, he handed me this tape, and it was just like this small, I'd never seen anything like it. It was this tiny little cartridge, and I wish I still had it because I lost it when I moved from Utah to Portland. Tiny little cartridge, and he handed it to me. I go, what's this? And he goes, this is the contents of what we just recorded. And I says, I thought it was for the insurance company. He says, no, it's for insurance. I go, what kind of insurance? He says, insurance that you will keep your mouth shut when you're told to.
Wow.
And
I went, what? And then he took off.
Well, why would he give you the tape? Oh, now there's another.
Because he wanted me to. He was hoping that somehow I would find a way. I think it was just like a little magnetic tape. I think he was hoping that I would watch it over again, or find somebody who could extract it, watch it over and over again as I relate the story of why my car blew up and why I was being harassed by a man. Because a man showed up at the station wearing a black overcoat, demanding I take it down. And at first he wanted to meet with the program director and talk to the program director about some possible inflammatory stuff that was said about one of the talk show hosts and the daughter of the mayor, who they thought he said that it was just a strange story. He says, didn't that talk show host that came on before you demanded the raping of the mayor's daughter? And I go, what are you talking about? And they said, well, are you Clyde Lewis? I said, yes. They said, oh, you're the guy with the guy we want to see about the West Desert alien photo. And I'm going, where do you go from raping the mayor's daughter to talking about this photo of this alien, alleged alien that was given to me at this gathering? It was just the most bizarre thing that ever happened in my life. And then when the car blew up, I knew then and there that I had been at least marked by the MIBs or whomever, some agency, telling me to shut my mouth about this. And come to find out, a number of servicemen who came from Camp Williams in their civilian clothes told me that what the guy had snapped was not an alien. He said that it was a camouflage that they were experimenting with for the Gulf War. They were going to go back in the Gulf and fight the war again. It was some camouflage that would render a guy invisible. And I kind of bought the story, but I also thought it was bizarre that there had to be some men in black showing up at my doorstep threatening me like this, telling me not to post the pictures.
Well, I've had a couple of incidents where I was threatened by these ghouls or whatever they are. Now, I don't think of them necessarily as in terms of MIB is wearing the dark clothes
right.
and all, but these are people or whoever that have been possessed is the best way I can describe it.
That's the way I see it, because they act too bizarre. So Timothy, we got to take a break. We got a break. 1 moment. We got a break. We'll be back. I know there's a lot of things to talk about and get to on this show. We got to take a break. We'll be back with more from Timothy Green tonight on Ground Zero, and we're very grateful that they both he and our other guest tonight, Claudia Cunningham, have come on the program. We'll be back with more. Keep it here on Ground Zero.
FM News 101 KXL.
Got an opinion? Call KXL now. 503-417-9KXL or 877-733-1011.
This is not a test. It is the future. Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
I know we have a short segment before I have to go to the news, but I wanted Timothy to continue his story. You were saying something about how you feel that these men in black are either possessed or they're dead or what have you. You know, there is something called refame, which is an occult term, meaning they're not living or they're not dead. They're just kind of there, and they're easily programmed. That seems to be what you're referring to.
Well, there was this one fellow who actually now would call. I have a number that I never give out. It's not listed. I don't tell anybody where I am because I have had death threats is the best way I could describe it. Now, these were not from these men in the guys that Dan Aykroyd saw, or these seem to be ones that are really even gone beyond the pale. Now, we could say, well, maybe these are just kind of like loose cannons of society out there, but I don't know. There's this one fellow, and I have his name. I know who he is. He would call at all hours of the day and night and threaten me to assassinate me, and not only that, but the mayor of New York and some a gal who had a music show on the classical rock station, which doesn't even quite fit in. I don't know if she had any interest in UFOs or not. And this guy would call me, and it was like he knew what I was doing. I mean, there was more to it than just the idle threats, you know. Mm-hmm. So finally, I got to the point where I said, "Well, I got to take some action here because this guy's going to." Maybe come after me. I'm going to be walking past a dark alley or something at night because I'm a night type person, and I'm out all hours of the day and night, and sometimes kind of spooky even in New York. Kind of coming home at 5 o'clock in the morning and it's still dark out. So I'm watching my back, as they say. Sometimes I even walk towards the off the sidewalk in the street there, so I don't have to pass other people. I take cautionary measures, measures about this.
Sure.
I'm gotta keep myself safe here.
Well, you should because
I gotta save the universe. I mean, what the heck?
Well, yeah, they think they're doing it too by eliminating you. That's the whole problem.
Yeah. Well, that's true. So anyway, he kept calling, and I got to the point where I said, well, I called the telephone company and said, can you trace the calls? And they traced it to Grand Central Station. Apparently, I don't know, he's a homeless person or something, and he's stalking there and calling not just me but other people as well. Finally, he must have gotten really over the edge one night, and he leaves a phone number. And I called the phone number, and it's his parents, elderly parents, retired down in Florida.
Wow.
And I said, I don't know what is wrong with your son. He obviously needs some sort of. He got some mental health issues, and he needs some, right. Care. Is there anything you can do before he harms, some innocent UFO book author.
Timothy and Claudia, what a great show tonight. Thank you for your experiences, and thank you, Timothy, for all your great books.
All right, and anybody who wants a free subscription to our publication, just go to conspiracyjournal.com and just fill in the blank there, and we'll send you all kinds of stuff through the mail on the line, and you'll enjoy it all.
And we probably have the link on the front page as well with the real MIB as well. People come to the Ground Zero media page, you'll be able to see that link. Please sign up for Conspiracy Journal. Tim's got some great work. He's done 30 or so books in his history. Claudia, thank you so much for being with us tonight and spending the whole time with us. We appreciate.
Great.
I'd love to bring you back on again if we can talk about other things besides MIBs. I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You keep going there.
Clyde.
I will. Thank you so much. What a great show. Thank you so much for both being on. Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody from Ground Zero. We're very happy that we had this show tonight. And look, if you have experiences or if you have something that's going on in your life that you just can't explain, if you feel that perhaps you need to share it with somebody, groundzeropdx@yahoo.com, or call the show. If it's a topic that you can relate to, that you can actually tell us about your experiences, we won't learn unless we hear. We're here for you. Please be in touch with us. We'll see you tomorrow night from Ground Zero.